Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hello? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello, valued viewer. About a year ago, I posted the video 20 Things Even the Biggest Scream Fans May Not Know. In that time, I've received so much encouragement and had the privilege of talking about Scream with many of you who have left comments. Being that we're about a month away from Scream 5, or Scream 2022 for all of you technical folks out there, I thought it'd be fun to have one final go at the first 4 films before I start to incorporate the 5th installment into my future Scream-related content. Like last time, these entries are more focused on character analysis, as well as trivia not often talked about. Some entries are brief, fun, goofy, and random, while others can get into some pretty in-depth observations. I suppose, just like when watching a Scream movie, be ready for anything. So, here's 20 more things even the biggest Scream fans may not know.
It's showtime.
At the very opening, before we even see Casey Becker, we hear a stock sound of a woman screaming. This is colloquially known as the female Wilhelm scream, named after the widely used sound effect. The stock sound used in Scream, however, was created in 1986 and first used in the 1987 picture Rock and Roll Nightmare. It's been reused so many times and is officially called Scream 7 Woman 3 Screams Exterior Close Perspective. However, the author and the screaming woman still remain unknown to this very day. The first Scream is the only film in the series in which the title card appears before the opening victims are killed. All subsequent installments refrain from showing the title of the film until after the first 2 murders. Title cards are used to signify that the film you're watching is officially up and running. Because Drew Barrymore was the false protagonist and advertised as if she was the main character, it is thus very fitting that the title card appeared before anything else in an attempt to trick the audience into thinking that by seeing Drew Barrymore directly after seeing the title, we'd be duped into thinking the movie is about her, and thus add to the shock when she dies 11 short minutes into the film. Knowing that audiences wouldn't be fooled a second time, the sequels wait to show the title card until after the opening scene, once the bloodbath has already begun. This is more a drive-by piece of trivia, and is one I'm sure many of you noticed. The first 2 lines of the first film, and thus the overall series, is simply hello.
Hello?
Hello?
When the killer tricks Casey into guessing that the killer in Friday the 13th is Jason instead of his mother Pamela Voorhees, not only is this based on a common misconception that's the result of how popular Jason became in the sequels, but it was also based on when screenwriter Kevin Williamson tricked a bunch of bar patrons at a trivia night. He got a free round of drinks as a result. In order to obtain an R rating, several cuts had to be made to some of the more violent moments in order to avoid an NC-17. However, one thing that stayed in the final cut was the very graphic and realistic knife stab through Casey Becker's heart. Oh, the MPAA tried to get Wes Craven to somehow edit the shot, dangling an NC-17 over his head, but Craven claimed he had no other tape to use. I guess the MPAA aren't as merciless as some say, because they actually allowed this to stay in the movie based on this claim. In actuality, Wes did have an alternate, less violent take of the heart stabbing he could have used, but the one he submitted for review was better. So he lied about it and said it was the only one, and it remains in this movie with an R rating. A lot of fans are absolutely certain that Billy killed Casey because Stu claims he was with Tatum that night. However, it's not that solid of an alibi considering Tatum never actually corroborates Stu being with her the entire night. Even Randy isn't convinced Tatum's word is concrete evidence.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Was that before or after he sliced and diced?
And Randy's right about everything in front of him, though the movie geek has a weakness for things behind him. There's also the logistics of how Billy would hang Casey's body on his own, or talk to her so unlabored right after gutting Steve.
Hey, we're not finished yet.
Suspension of disbelief becomes a huge mess when you put only one killer at the scene, while everything lines up perfectly if there are two killers present. Furthermore, after Casey is stabbed through the heart, she pulls off the mask and clearly recognizes the killer. Sure, we can safely assume she knows Billy from school, but this is the look of regret for being defeated by an expected enemy, an ex-boyfriend. Throughout the years of being a diehard Scream fan, I've seen my share of character rankings. Stu, Randy, and Gale are almost always in the top 3, with Tatum finding her way into the favorites section more often as time goes on. But I don't say I ever recall Billy being ranked that high. And that makes sense, Billy is a douchebag. But Skeet Ulrich gave the most underrated performance of the entire series. If you look closely throughout the film, you can spot plenty of instances of a killer's eyes that it's haunting to know not only was the mastermind behind the whole event hiding in plain sight, but also other hints that he was the killer if you watch very closely. One of the entries of the first 20 Things Even the Biggest Scream Fans May Not Know video debunked a theory that supports a third killer assisting Billy and Stu. And I shall debunk another third killer theory in this video. Some fans say that Ghostface spying on Sydney and Tatum is proof there's a third killer because both Billy and Stu are seen at the video store the following scene. However, even though the two scenes are back to back, there's no proof there isn't a time jump between these two scenes. In fact, the deleted scene that was detailed in 20 Things Even the Biggest Scream Fans May Not Know, which depicted Billy and Stu bromancing at Woodsboro Common, actually took place between these two scenes, confirming there was indeed a time jump before the video store scene, and thus indicates that the Woodsboro murders could have been orchestrated by Billy and Stu without the assistance of a third killer. On top of this, there were also at least 2 students running around with Ghostface masks as a prank. So if you don't believe this is Billy or Stu, then it's still more likely that this Ghostface is a prankster over being a third killer. In the previous video, we discussed how certain things were put into the viewer's subconscious to make them suspect other characters were the killers, instead of focusing on how Billy was Sheriff Burke's favorite suspect, or how Stu is conveniently never in the same room as Ghostface. Some of these false leads to trick the viewer were giving Sheriff Burke similar shoes as Billy, or how Sydney and Tatum thought they were talking to Randy when they were addressing Ghostface. But a nod needs to be given to the brilliance of the costume and wardrobe department for giving everyone distinct clothing, and how it was used to subconsciously raise suspicion about characters as they float around in the background, like they're a lurking predator ready to kill at the right moment. The original intention was to have Dewey die, leaving the survivor count of the principal characters to be Sydney, Gale, and Randy. There are also 3 main rules to survive a horror movie.
Number 1, you can never have sex. Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, "I'll be right back."
Scream not only helped revive a whole genre of films, but also helped them be taken more seriously as valid cinema, in part because it addressed many of the genre's cliches by rejecting them. Case in point, the 3 original survivors are the ones who actually break the rules to survive. Sydney has sex, with the killer no less. Randy is clearly a drunken fool, and Gale tells Kenny she'll be right back. What also sets the opening scenes of the sequels apart from Scream 1's is that Screams 2, 3, and 4 use Stab as the backdrop, And with each subsequent installment, the importance of Stab becomes much more apparent. Scream 2's opening takes place at a movie theater during Stab's premiere, when it was just being introduced to the world. Scream 3's opening takes place in Hollywood and includes the death of Cotton Weary, who's now a celebrity and is set to have a cameo in Stab 3, demonstrating that Stab has become commercialized. And Scream 4 revolves around the deaths of Jenny and Marnie, who are watching the latest Stab installment, even though they don't really care about it, showing that Stab has become cliched, normalized, and so ingrained in that universe's pop culture. Another drive-by piece of trivia. Upon its initial release, Scream was so incredibly successful that even some of the most serious actors wanted a piece of the pie afterwards. This explains why not only does Scream 2 have an all-star cast of central characters instead of an ensemble of promising up-and-comers like the first installment, but also characters so minor that even a few of these celebrities are only in one scene. While Cotton Weary didn't become a principal character until Scream 2, he's essential to the backstory of the series, having been the man that Billy and Stu pinned Maureen Prescott's murder on. As such, he was referenced throughout the first film, and with a unique name like Cotton Weary, you definitely know him by reputation if you happen to forget his brief appearance in Scream 1 on the television while Sidney and Tatum watch. What's interesting is that Cotton is also introduced in Scream 2 on the television as Sidney watches with her new friend, Hallie. Not only that, the first time Cotton makes his first in-person appearance, Gail's cameraman Joel steps aside for Sidney to see Cotton in person, as if Cotton came into reality through a camera. To add to this mystique, in Scream 3, even though Cotton is one of the victims in the opening scene, we actually last see him when Roman projects old footage he captured of Maureen. Just like Cotton's first appearance, his final appearance is on a screen as Sidney watches. In Scream 2, Wes and Kevin were really trying to make Randy's death a twist. Not only the obvious, like killing a central character in the middle of a movie in broad daylight, would shock fans, but they also took efforts to do little things. For example, during the film class scene, Randy mentions that he'd let the geek get the girl. Pairing that statement with the fact that Randy narrowly survives Scream 1 makes it appear that Randy is being foreshadowed to be the leading man in Scream 2. Another instance is during his death scene. Wes carefully places Randy in an open space to make it appear he's safe, when in actuality, the news van is just off frame. These subtle creative choices subconsciously make the viewer think Randy is in the clear, which amps up the shock when the all-knowing beloved movie geek meets his maker.
And here again you show Randy's, you just cheat the van in there, you just barely see a little bit of it, but basically you show him surrounded by nothing so that the audience is tricked into thinking that nobody can possibly get him out there in the middle of nowhere.
Throughout Scream 2, there are some subtle and obvious slights between Derek and Randy, both of whom love Sidney. However, when it comes to accusations, both Randy and Derek defend one another. When Randy proposes that Derek could be the next Billy Loomis, Dewey quickly rolls with it, but Randy basically tells Dewey to put on the brakes and examine other suspects before concluding the killer is Derek.
So you think it's Derek? Not so fast.
Similarly, when Mickey, the actual killer, accuses Randy of being the killer, Derek dismisses that possibility immediately.
I've been thinking about this whole murder thing. Have you checked out Randy? What?
This could be a nod to the friendship that Jamie Kennedy and Jerry O'Connell developed during production. The two also became close with Sarah Michelle Gellar and Rebecca Gayheart. Back in the late 90s, Kennedy supposedly did an interview in which he said the four of them were partying one night, and Kennedy accidentally called Sarah Michelle Gellar Rebecca. This apparently upset Sarah Michelle Gellar so much that she repeatedly screamed at him, "What's my name?" Jenny McCarthy's character in Scream 3 is named Sarah Darling and is rumored to be an in-joke on how demanding Sarah Michelle Gellar was on the set of Scream 2.
Has there been another goddamn rewrite?
So far, each film has a survivor pattern. This consists of 4 characters who make it out alive. Each of the installments include Dewey, Sidney, and Gale making it out at the very end, plus 1 additional character. In the original, it was Randy. Scream 2 was Cotton, Scream 3, Detective Mark Kincaid, and Scream 4, Deputy Judy Hicks. Now, this pattern doesn't go without some exceptions. For example, Cotton Weary was in Scream 1, but he wasn't present for the murder spree of Billy and Stu, so he wouldn't count, but brownie points for surviving death row. Like Dewey, Gale's cameraman Joel was supposed to die in the original draft of Scream 2, but in the final cut, he flees as soon as Randy is killed and doesn't return until everything is safe. So the pattern mainly applies to characters who were in the war zone when everybody was being picked off one by one, and are also central to the story. Therefore, this pattern overlooks characters like Joel, Neil Prescott, Sheriff Burke, Chief Hartley, and Detective Wallace. Another pattern with these survivors is that the 4th character who makes it out of one movie tends to die in the next installment. Randy was the 4th survivor of the original, but died in Scream 2. Cotton was the 4th survivor in Scream 2, but died in Scream 3. Mark Kincaid survived Scream 3, but wasn't in Scream 4. Yet, if he was, we could probably make the educated guess that he wouldn't make it out alive. Fingers crossed Deputy Hicks breaks this pattern in Scream 5. The original idea of bringing the initial trilogy full circle and ending Scream 3 back in Woodsboro was dropped in favor of the progression that the characters and the stab craze had within the Scream universe. So instead of rolling back to the roots, they decided to push bigger and end in Hollywood. This is apparent right from the opening shots of each of the first 3 films, starting with a house that was portrayed in a movie shown in a theater that was filmed in Hollywood. Despite everything that Cotton went through during and prior to the events of Scream 1, he still comes across as off-putting in Scream 2, not to mention suspicious, being entitled to 15 minutes of fame because he went through a hardship, which being famous due to a tragedy is a bit of a reoccurring theme throughout the series. Cotton slept with at least one married woman and flirts shamelessly. However, much like Gale, at the end of the day, Cotton is a stand-up person when he needs to be. Similar to Kenny in Scream, using his final moments alive to save Sidney. More on that in the previous video if you haven't seen it yet. Cotton does the same thing in Scream 3. If you notice, the killer is aware that Cotton either knows where Sidney is hiding or can at least find out through connections. Despite everything Sidney and Cotton had been through, Cotton refuses to give Sidney up and ends up dying as a result.
Where's Maureen's daughter, Sidney?
Who the fuck is this?
Somebody who'd kill to know where Sidney Prescott is. One chance, Cotton. You've got connections. Where is she?
You listen to me, you fucking psycho. You lay a finger on Christine and I swear to God I'll kill you.
Wrong answer.
While Scream 4 is a sequel, incorporating events from the previous films into this one, there are also direct references that show the killer's attempt to remake the original instead of following it. Not only is Scream 4 the only other film besides Scream 1 to take place in Woodsboro, but also Jill and Charlie rely on their group of friends to parallel Sidney's group of friends. Charlie is under the impression that he's supposed to be the new Randy, Jill the new Sidney, and Trevor the new Billy. However, when Jill double-crosses Charlie, it's revealed that she intends to make Charlie the new Stu and have Robbie as the new Randy.
You said it, Charlie, Billy, and Stu. Trevor and you.
Rewriting the events to be only her as the survivor. When realizing this, the parallel between Robbie and Randy are even more apparent than they were before. Not only are they both movie geeks, their names start with an R, and they're wearing green during the party. Also, Robbie died possibly the same way Randy would have died had Sidney not screamed and scared off Ghostface. As such, being that Randy relied on Sidney to survive, it should be no surprise that the new Randy didn't have a chance of surviving thanks to the new Sidney being the actual killer. Spoiler warning if you haven't seen Fight Club. When Jill inflicts herself with wounds to stage the scene to appear that she's the sole survivor, this is reminiscent of Edward Norton's character in Fight Club beating himself up to stage the office like his boss had assaulted him. Edward Norton's character also imagines himself to be a separate person, Tyler Durden, played by Brad Pitt, just like how Jill imagines herself to be a present-day version of her cousin, Sidney Prescott. In the first video, I included one piece of bonus trivia. Since this is the second video, why not do 2 pieces of bonus trivia? While Sidney and Gale started off as enemies, due to the latter's shameless coverage of Maureen's gruesome death, they gradually become closer as each film progresses. However, there are still major contrasts between the 2 characters, specifically how they deal with survival at the beginning of each sequel. For example, in Scream 2, Sidney just wants to carry on with her life as normal as possible, whereas Gale is responsible for starting the stab craze and spreading the word of their story to the rest of the world. In Scream 3, Sidney becomes a complete recluse, while Gale continues to become more of a celebrity, giving conferences, and Stab has become so successful that it's now a Hollywood hit. And they're even making movies which are no longer based on the true stories, just to cash in on the success of the franchise. However, in Scream 4, the roles are somewhat reversed. Sidney is the one touring, with a memoir that's getting a lot of attention, while Gale is suffering from writer's block and trying to avoid being a has-been.
Lucky for you, there's a bonus round.
After the recent tragedy of cinematographer Helena Hutchins being fatally shot and director Joel Souza being wounded on the set of Rust, Jamie Kennedy did a video on his experience with gun safety on film sets, in which he revealed that the reason Billy shoots to Randy's right instead of, more logically, aiming to the left so that the bullet hits the movie geek's heart is because Kennedy has a pacemaker.
I had squibs and I was tripping out because of my pacemaker, so that's why they shot me on this side.
In the published script, there's no specification as to where Billy shoots Randy. Kennedy had mentioned in a separate video that there may have been a draft of the script in which Randy dies, similar to how Dewey was supposed to originally die.
I kind of think I was supposed to die. I think it was a rewrite. I'm not sure because I was shot and then I eventually came back. But I was out of the picture for a while she was going to kill people. And then I popped up and I was like, oh.
If this is the case, Kennedy having a pacemaker in real life may have actually saved Randy in Scream 1. If otherwise, it would have been more logical for Billy to shoot Randy in the heart, likely killing him instantly. As I said earlier in the video, I really enjoy reading your comments and talking Scream with all of you. Please let me know how much of this you found new or interesting, and if there are any other things about Scream that you think your fellow Scream fans may not know. Also, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and share. I'll be back when Scream 5 is out, and I look forward to talking about it with all of you then. Thanks for watching.